Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Cedar Ridge Chronicles. My name is Daniel Williams. If you've never been here before, I want to welcome you. Today, I'm going to do another video of how to mount a whitetail deer, but today I'm going to do what I call the advanced techniques. I've been doing this now for right at 10 years, and I have changed over and over and over again the way that I mount these things. And the way I mount this deer today is not going to be the last way that I end up mounting them. I promise you, I'll probably end up changing it again. But I do want to share what I have learned. I want to share what I have changed. And for any of y'all who have watched the previous two How to Mount a Deer Head videos, there's everything on this one is going to be different. Some of the things I'm going to do in this video, I would not necessarily recommend when you're first getting started, but I'm going to point those out and let y'all know what those are as we go along. So the deer we're going to be mounting up today is going to be Andrew Maxwell's deer, Southern Outdoorsman podcast. So got on the Freezer Queen shirt and the Southern Outdoorsman lucky hat today. I've killed some good deer in this hat. What he's going to have is a big old semi-upright offset bend mirrors. It's going to be a right turn, and this is a really big deer. This is a 22-inch form. Really pretty 8-point. And the skull cap is trimmed real short, so we're going to Bondo that skull cap up. I'm going to show you how I do that right quick, and once I get that done, we'll do some form prep, and we're going to get started on this buck. All right, so first off, we're going to go ahead and wash this cape. Let's go ahead and get it cleaned up, and I can get it in the washing machine and start spinning it out. This hide has been tanned, and it still does have the tan on it. That is the best way to freeze one, according to Paul Kales from Pro One, and I have had very good luck doing that. Once you get it thawed, you're just going to wash it. We'll spray all the tan off of it. Once we get it good and clean, we're going to put it in the washing machine, spin it out, and then we're going to shave it down even thinner than it already is before we mount it. Okay, so once we get the cape cleaned off real good, I like to just kind of squeeze it like that with my hands. Just kind of squeeze as much water out of it as you can. Then we're going to wring it out. We're going to go to the washing machine with it. When we put this in the washing machine, we're going to open the cape up just like how it goes on the mannequin. It's going to slip right down over that agitator. Just like that. I'm going to pull the head over it. Open the mouth around it. That way everything is contained. As this spins, it's going to not only throw all the water out of that hair, it's also going to fluff the hair, and it helps stretch that cape with that centrifugal force. Actually works pretty good to get some stretch out of it. I'm going to run two spin cycles. Now while we're waiting on that, let's go ahead and prep this form. All right, my personal favorite thing to use is a Dremel tool. I've just got this little cutting head bit on here. Don't remember exactly what size that is, but if you look in the description of the video, in my Amazon store, I've got this specific bit in that Amazon store where you can go on Amazon and get it. Now you can, when you're doing this lip line, if you use a Dremel tool, this right here, this bar, this post, is a little bit thick compared to, say, a knife or a little saw that you'd use to cut that lip line. So what I do is I'll do a plunge cut all the way in it, and then I'll go fairly quick around that lip line with it plunged all the way in. That way that post basically burns through this foam, and it won't cut near as big a gap as if you use the cutting head and really water it out. There again, if you want to use a knife or if you want to use a saw, that's perfectly fine too. Doing it this way, you'll still end up with a good tight lip line. You just have to make sure that you don't use too big a bit, and make sure that you don't leave that bit in there and just water that out too big, or you're gonna end up having to backfill it with clay or epoxy or something. I'll show y'all what I do here. This thing going on full blast. Put it all the way in like that. I go upward, and I go back around to the side, just like that. And that's all I do to it. On the nose, it's going to work in the nostril. That right there. You can also use replacement nose if you want to do that. I don't mind doing the epoxy work, building in the nostril. But it does not take very long to use replacement nose if you decide to do that. And what else I'd like to do is on this seam, along this deer right here, I'll use this to break down some of that seam. You can cut this off with a knife or scalpel, but in places it's really hard to get to because that blade is flat on those knives. This just kind of eats that right off of there. You also do this with a rasp or, however you want. Just make sure that you get this off of here. If your skin is thin enough, like it's supposed to be, this will show up on the mount, and you don't want a seam going across the front of your mount. Just like that. Now on the top part, all of that, I will do all that with a knife because I can get to all that much easier. I like to make sure it's good and smooth. That right there is basically all I'm going to do with the Dremel. I'm going to put it on the mountain stand and show you all the rest here. Now one's over, I'm going to go to round two. All right, so I've got a flimsy blade boning knife here. I just take it and just shave that seam off of there. There again, you can do this with a Dremel tool if you want to. This knife is a little bit faster, but on the underside, you just about can't get to everything, whereas out here you can smooth that right off. Make sure that you get all this off of this nose and off the bridge of this nose. That skin right there, it will show that seam up right across there, and it looks rough. Trust me, I've done it before to my own deer. Now we're going to take a carpet roller. It's right here. I've also got these in my Amazon store. So you'll look in the description. Go to that Amazon store and this will be in there too. Right there is a lifesaver when it comes to form prep. If you've got a form that is very, very hard, like Mackenzie, it's not as very hard to use. It's not as useful on those forms because they're just too hard to even penetrate through there. But this right here on a Mears form, y'all can see how great that texture's at, breaks through that outside little skin, and you get really good adhesion with your hide paste. On a harder, stiffer form, I would suggest getting one of the prep tools from Mears Whitetail forms. He's got an attachment that goes into a reciprocating saw that you can use that just pokes holes all in it. And it works fantastic also. All right, cape is ready. Form is about ready. Here we go. One last thing that I like to do on these tear ducts, something that Ben Mears taught me how to do. Take a scalpel or a knife where that tear duct is. You're gonna just cut it, just like that. You're gonna make a cut here, make a cut here, and you're gonna make a diagonal cut back to the first cut. like that. And you're going to take a brad, a little finishing nail or whatever, and put that in there like that. Now what this gives you is a little block that's removable, that's stuck in there with that brad. You can pull that out, and when you do your tear ducts, you can tuck your skin into that slot you just made, press that brad back in, and it's going to give you a tight, snug fit in there. And keep that from pulling back out again. It works great. All right, so next we're going to Bondo the rack. Before we get that cape out of the washing machine, we're going to put the Bondo on here. You can see how this rack is cut off real flat in the back. There's not a whole lot of skull cap left there. I like to trim mine where it sits flat here. You can do that by putting the nose straight down to the floor and cutting straight down perpendicular to the table, and you'll get that flat cut, but not a problem. What you want to do is you want to make sure that this line right here, where the top of that skull goes over that head, that it lines up with the front so that it's making a nice straight transition. All right, you don't want your rack sitting up too high like that, and you don't want it laying down too low. You want to make sure that that line right there stays as consistent as possible. Now your width here of your skull cap needs to be basically coming right out, also in line with that eye. This right here is very, very close. It's going to work out well. One other thing that you really want to look for is you want to make sure that this distance between the burr and the eye socket, just a general rule, is about 2 fingers. You can see that right there is going to be right at 2 fingers wide. And there again, that's not, that's not extremely precise, but that's going to be, you want to at least make sure that you try to go by that, because if you don't, you're going to end up with this either too close or too far away, and your cape is going to try to pull all which ways while you're trying to get it fit and while you're trying to let it dry. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix up some Bondo. We're going to put on this skull cap, and I just like to hold this in place where it needs to be until that Bondo kicks, and it's going to give us our angle that we need. Then we can apply more if we need to and smooth everything out. Get us a generous amount of Bondo here. We've got a lot of skull to fill in here. Just dip my finger in it right quick. Use anything you want to apply this Bondo. Paint stir sticks or popsicle sticks or tongue depressors, as they call them online. I just have an old knife that I have turned into a spatula. All right, let's go over here. Show y'all what we're gonna do here. Gonna get a pretty good bit of this. Put it down on here. We're gonna get our antlers. We're going to hold those in place. Right in there. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hold that until that kicks. It's going to take just a few minutes. We're going to have us a flat skull plate to work with. Okay, so the Bondo has kicked. Now, there's not a whole lot of Bondo touching this skull cap. So what I did, I went ahead and put a couple of screws in here just to hold that in place. You see it's still really flexible, still wanting to move, but it's not going anywhere. It's set where we need it to be. I'm going to go back and we'll mix a little bit more Bondo up, and we're going to fill in some of these gaps around here and get that locked into place. All right, got our Bondo mixed here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to work it down into this gap. Try not to get any on the antlers if you can help it. I'm going to go around back and I'm going to fill in some of this brain cavity here. That's where the majority of this is going to go. right like that. That's going to give it the strength and stability that it needs as if it was a whole skull cap. You know, skulls can be busted. You want to make sure that you've got something in that brain cavity, whether you use clay or epoxy or Bondo. It's going to be kind of hard to bust them while they're hanging on the wall, obviously. And they are a little bit more durable than we give them credit for, because deer, I mean, they fight and they bust their antlers together. And that skull's pretty tough. You never know when it might fall off the wall. I've seen some mishaps before where deer have fallen off the wall. Didn't break the skull cap, but they broke their antlers all to pieces. Kind of flatten it out best you can. It ain't got to be perfect because we're going to cover all of that with clay to smooth all that out. All right, so pay attention to your Bondo as it's starting to dry. And once it kicks, like this first batch that we put on here, you can take a knife or scalpel, and it's almost like rubber. Before it gets really hard, because Bondo will, I mean, it'll harden on up to where it's got to be sanded. But you can take that and you can cut that off with a knife as that starts to harden up, and it will keep you from having to do so much sanding and so much work. See there? You just go ahead and get those edges where they need to be before they harden in place. And then when you go do your clay work, hey, it's already ready to go. All right, well, let's go get our cape out of the washing machine. It should be ready. Y'all can see. See how fluffed up the hair is? It's really amazing how well the job that does. I'm going to take this over here to the table, and we're going to start thinning it. This is another one of those steps that some people do and some people don't. Amy Ritchie taught me this one, where when you get done with all of your tanning, with all your washing, this cape is ready to mount. It's completely ready to mount. But I go back over it on my fleshing machine. When you tan a hide, when it's in the pickle, everything else, you can get that real thin. And that pickle plumps it to where you can thin it. But what I've noticed is, once you get the tan on it, once you get it completely ready to go, there is just enough of a, I'm not gonna say a thickness, which I mean it kind of is, but the leather, the fibers in the leather get a little bit of a toughness to them. And when you run it that one last time, all you gotta take is just a little bit off with that flesh machine. It breaks all those fibers up, and that thing turns into elastic. It gets really, really stretchy. Amy told me about that a couple years ago, and I've been doing that ever since. And it makes for a really good cape. Makes it really nice going on the form and stretching and stitching and all. So what I'm gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and thin this down. If y'all need any videos on that, I do have some other videos of just fleshing a cape. As a matter of fact, my full body mount video, if you want to look back at it, if you have any curiosity about that, I do have a video where I'm shaving the whole cape on my full body mount. All right, so the Bondo has kicked on our second little batch here. So I'm gonna go ahead, before I thin that cape, we're gonna go ahead and make sure there's not any extra anywhere that we're gonna have to deal with later. We're gonna go back over it with clay, so you don't have to just spend all day long on it. You just wanna make sure that there's not any imperfections and high spots. That's the biggest thing. You're better off having it lower than where the final surface is gonna be. That way your final surface you can create with clay really smooth. He's got a very interesting skull cap here. The side of his skull, show y'all this, side of his skull right here, where this other little, it's almost like a burr on the bottom of that beam, but it's almost like it tried to grow another beam. You can see this big knob right here on his skull cap sticks out. A little bit different. You got to take that into consideration too when you're trying to line that skull cap up. All right, well, I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna shave this cape and we're gonna start the mounting process. So something I'm gonna spend my time on over here before we go to the machine, I'm gonna take out the ear cartilage, get that removed, and I'm gonna go in here and we're gonna thin the nostrils. We're gonna shave some of this down, and just around these eyes, we're gonna get that shaved down pretty thin too. If y'all can see, we have removed every bit of the eye skin. It is cut right to the edge of that eye. When I started using epoxy around the eyes, started just sticking that directly to the epoxy. It works really well. We're going to show you all that here in just a minute. First, I'm going to remove these ear cartilages. And we're going to thin those nostrils. And we're going to be ready to go. I'm going to make a run up through here and show y'all what I'm talking about. When you tune your blade, your guards are going to make a big difference of how deep you're cutting. You just basically want your blade exposed from the guard. But when I use my steels, what I like to do, I like to get under this lip and on top of this lip. But when I finish this off, I'm going to lay this steel perfectly parallel with the table. Instead of giving it any angle, it's going to be just almost perfectly flat for about that long, just a second. That's going to cause that blade to cut into that leather, and it's also going to keep it from being so aggressive that you pop holes in it. Let me show y'all. You see this line right here? I like to work right to left, that way I'm cutting into the thicker parts of the leather. It makes that blade want to grab it a little bit easier. Just going to come across just like that. See there? It's that easy. You don't have to be in a hurry. Just take your time, do a little at a time. Just like that. See where I'm going back over it, getting down to where you can just about see those hair follicles. See where it's starting to turn blue right there? That's what you want. Call it getting down to the blue, trying to get to that blue. You can see this line that I'm making. See that right there? The difference between this and this. Very little, there's very little thickness difference. But you're going to start to see this start to stretch, become very, very, very elastic as those fibers get broken. That strip that I've made up through there. We're going to do that to this entire hide, and it's going to be ready. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to build the ear butts. I'm going to sculpt these ear butts on the form, which is different than what I used to do. We're going to cut them off, and we're going to put them in the freezer, let them firm up, where we can go back and glue them up whenever we get ready to use them. First, what I want to do is I'm going to make just a little bit of a relief cut for the base of that ear butt to go in. Not like that. You don't have to be real deep. There's already a little bit of a spot in this form. We're going to kind of determine our ear position, but we're going to want that be. I'll probably have it something along those lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to build that ear butt accordingly. Take a ball of clay. That's something to stick to here. Get our general shape. And I'm not going to tell y'all that this is the right way to do this. This is just a little bit more precise way to do this, rather than stuffing clay into the skin. But as long as you got your anatomy accurate, you can do it either way. The thing I like about this is that it allows me to get whatever ear position I want while staying true to the anatomy, because you know that this ear liner is up against that form. You're not getting too far away from the form with the main cup of your ear by using too much clay between the form and the ear liner. Close to where I want it right there. So we'll go in and put a few of the muscles on here. Get this moved up just a little bit so you can kind of see what I'm doing. And now I'm no, professional here. I've looked at some pictures and looked at a little bit of anatomy and stuff, but there again, this doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to make sure that the muscles are where they, are supposed to be in relation to how the deer uses his ears. One thing I will say, if you're using air dry pottery clay like I use, it has got a lot of shrinkage. So I like to go on here heavy. I like to use more clay than what you actually think you're going to need, because this is going to shrink a lot as it's drying. And in order to get the look that you're wanting to get, you're going to need to go heavier on here than what even the reference photos show for a finished product. That right there is going to be really close. And I tell you what else you're going to want to do. I've got a spray bottle of water, and I just like to keep that misted, because you don't want that to dry up. You want it to stay wet, so that when you go to stick all this back together, it wants to grab. Right about like that. And once we get to putting the mount together, we'll go back behind there and do the last muscle behind the ear. That's about what you want. Now we're going to take a piece of string. You can use braid or whatever you want to use. This is just sinew cape thread. Hold that ear. We're going to cut that off, just like that. I'm going to take this and go set it back there in the freezer. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and we can continue our work. Okay, so now we have got ears set where we want them. We're going to remove the skull cap so that we can get the cape on. So I cut that clay. I'm going to go set these in the freezer. Now, I know this seems like a lot of work compared to the way I was doing it, and it is, but your accuracy is just going to be better. The anatomy is going to be better. And the more of this that you do in little steps like this, your final product's just going to be more accurate. It takes a little bit longer, but I mean, now the ears are done, so when we get to that stage, we don't have to do ears. So It don't take quite as much extra time as it seems like it does. It's just a different order of doing everything. All right, let's get this cape slid on here. Deer has got some pretty bad scarring up under his throat, around his neck. A couple little holes we're gonna have to fix, but nothing major. You'll notice I have not set the eyes. Used to, I would have done the eyes before I put the cape on here, and then just sort of fixed them as I went. But I started using epoxy on the eyes, and I found that works very, very well, for me anyway. All right, let's go ahead and set the antlers. Everything lined back up, fit it right down through those holes. Like that. Put us a couple more screws in there. See how tough that Bondo is. All I do is drill through the skull cap and let that screw grab into that Bondo. Those are not going anywhere. So now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to fill in the clay around the skull cap. I'm going to go ahead and get all of that smoothed out right there. And then we'll put the ears in. There is a muscle that runs along the back side of the ear. It comes across the back of the skull cap or the back of the head. So you want to make sure that you get that built up back here a little bit, which obviously you got to build in the back of that skull cap anyway. But when you put those ears on, I'll show y'all here in just a minute. There will almost be a little bit of a void back here on the back side of the ear. And that's where that muscle goes. When you put that ear on there, you're going to notice there's a spot that needs something. And that's exactly what it is. We'll get to that in a second. It sounds like I'm tap dancing when I'm walking around in here. It's because the bottom of my shoes are pretty much petrified from walking around in salt. I've had these shoes now for 3 or 4 years, and the bottom of the soles are done. They're hard as a rock. What are we gonna do first? Sometimes I do the eyes first, sometimes I do the ears first. Ears have not been in the freezer for very long. I think I'll just go ahead and set the eyes, because it won't take me just a second to put those ears on there. Give them a few more minutes to harden up. I want to make sure that you use the proper size eyes and the proper size ear liners. The best thing to do with the ear liners is always keep you some smalls, mediums, and larges available, and that way you can test fit them. Every deer, it don't matter how big or how old the deer is, all their ears are just a little bit different. So on the eyes, I like to cut the eyes out, but I will leave the plastic on the front of the eye and mount it. That way when I get done, cut that plastic off and remove it, and all your paint and finishes of any kind come right off with that plastic. It's another one of those Ben Mears tricks I saw. You want to make sure that your form is perfectly straight how it's going to hang on the wall. Make sure the back is flat, perfectly perpendicular to the floor, however it's going to be on the wall. Because what you're going to do, when you set your eyes, the pupil is going to be parallel to the floor. Pupil is always level. It doesn't matter where the nose goes, up or down. I just learned that recently. And it's something that's very, very important. How I never knew that, I don't know. I've never heard it said. I've never seen it when I researched. So, but I mean, it makes sense. I mean, your eyeballs are round. I move my head, my eyeballs stay level with what I'm looking at. So I want to make sure that those pupils are level, parallel with the ground. just like that. And I still set my eyes with clay so that I can kind of move them around. It gives me just a second to get everything right where I want it. And I'll put just a little roll of clay right along the edges. Just kind of hold it in place while I'm working. But we're going to do our eyelid sculpting with epoxy sculpt. Okay, so what you're going to need is 2 balls about the size of golf balls. This may be just a little smaller than a golf ball, but once you mix that together, it's going to be just about the right amount for these eyes. All right, so on this bottom edge, put just a little bit along that tear duct so there's something to stick to that cape. I'm just going to form that eye. Same thing on the top side. I'll put just a little bit along that block that we made. It's probably a little bit hard to see here. We're going to come in. Make sure it's pressed up against the eye. And come on over with that. We're going to press this down like that so that this takes the shape of the front of that eye socket. And once we put these eyes together, we can form this as needed in the shape that we need the eye to be. That's going to get us real close. Like that right there. I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. All right, now that I've got both sides done, what I'm going to do is take the remainder of this epoxy sculpt, split it in half, and roll it into a roll a little bit bigger than an earthworm. I'm going to wrap that around that burr. Keep it away from the edge of the burr and just mash it down into your clay like that. Leaving a little bit of a roll up at the top. When we pull that cape in there, it's going to go up in that slot and get it tied off, and then we're going to press this into that cape so that it pinches it in between the burr and that epoxy. That epoxy will harden within about 30-45 minutes, and it'll lock everything in place. One of the more important things you want to remember during all this is applying your glue. Doing these steps this way, you end up covering up a lot of your work that can't be uncovered. So make sure that you're gluing as you go. You need glue anywhere on the form that you cannot reach once you get to this step. That's why I went ahead and I've glued the face before I put the skin on. Now I'm getting the glue around on these other places that's not epoxy. And you can put glue on the epoxy if you want to. I like to wet the epoxy before I put the skin on it, get it kind of sticky. And then when it dries, the skin dries to the epoxy. It keeps the eyes from moving and the burrs, the antlers, from going anywhere. I'm just going to take a little water, just wet that epoxy and rub on it enough to where once it starts to get a little bit pliable, a little sticky, really make it stick to that skin good. Okay, so now we're going to pull the head on up, the skin, and get all this stuff set up here kind of where it's going to be. I'm going to go back here with some pins. I'm going to pin these ears back. So that we can set the eyes. as short as this incision is, I don't think they're going to go anywhere. But this just prevents anything from moving and pulling on those eyes. First, we're going to line up these tear ducts. Make sure on both sides you've got your cape stretched right there. Make sure the nose, all that's laying straight. And get those tear ducts stretched over right where they need to sit behind those little blocks. And we're going to tuck that right up in there behind those blocks. We've also got that epoxy laying right there, so what we're going to do, push that block in. There it goes. Now, push this on up in there, and that epoxy is going to pinch in right behind that. On the rest of this eye, all we're doing is laying this up against the edge of that epoxy. No tucking skin, no nothing. We'll make sure that front corner stays tight. Grab my other tucking tool. Once you get all of that laying where you need it, you're going to work in your eyebrow. All that epoxy is still pliable, and that in just a few minutes is going to be a permanent line. It will not move. Take your tucking tool and smooth all that out. Make that edge nice and clean. Just get your shape how you like it. Because once that's dry, you ain't gonna be able to move it. That right there. You can see how easy that was. If you go to, when you use tucking skin, the problem is when you're pushing all that up in there, you move everything. But doing it this way, there's nothing to move. And once you get it where you want it, when all this dries, it's permanent. And it doesn't take, here in about 30 minutes, all that right there is going to be dry. All right, now something I forgot to show y'all. I took a bead of clay about that long and about that big around and ran it from right here, right around there. Put that on there and it makes a little trough right here. I filled that up with glue. That's a trick that my buddy Justin showed me. What it does, for one thing, it makes this brow stand up. We're not going to leave it this high. Once we get all this stuff stitched up, we're going to mash that down a little bit and form it to where it makes that eyebrow ridge up there where that hair break is, to make that hair stand out, make it look really, really predominant. It looks awesome. But with all the glue, you take a big old blob of glue and put it right there in that little pocket. When you get all of this stitched, you can stitch all of this without getting glue all over the place. And then when you go to do your gluing, all you've got to do is take that glue and press it, and it will just go back through here and spread out throughout the rest of the head. And it works fantastic. Keeps you from getting stuff all over your hands. All right, so it's time to start stitching on. I have got a few videos of how to do different stitches. So I'm not going to make y'all sit here and watch me stitch this entire thing up. What I'm going to be using today is sinew thread. It's not necessarily my favorite or my least favorite. You can use just about anything you want. Good thing about sinew thread is you can split it into different size strands, thicker and thinner. So depending on what you're working on, sometimes you may need a thinner or thicker strand. But you can use fishing line, bow thread, B55 bowstring is one of my favorites. But I'm just out right now and this works just as good. If y'all see where I've got my finger wrapped up right here, that's just regular masking tape. I use these L-shaped, that's a 2.5 inch L-shaped needle with a cutting head on it. It's got 3 different edges instead of a cone. A cone does not want to push through leather. This works very well, it cuts the leather. When I'm stitching, I'll put this flat spot against that masking tape. Hold that needle like that and press, and that keeps that needle from going through the skin of your hand, especially when your hand gets real wet. If you're mounting multiple deer in a day, it really comes in handy. But I'm gonna start stitching this thing up and get him where we can start working on the face, and see y'all here in a second. All right, so I've got the V stitched up in the back. I still have not stitched the seam, but now that I've got the V stitched up, I've put the ear right back in position where it needs to sit. And I'm gonna go ahead and tuck this skin between this epoxy and the antler burr. And I'm gonna press that epoxy, flatten it out up against that skin, like that. And that's gonna be held in there super tight. And that'll prevent that from moving, from going anywhere. So we've got the ears set where we want them. And y'all can see, this is that place I was talking about where there's some loose skin. There's a muscle that runs from the top of this ear right up along the back of the head right here. So what we're gonna do is, just gonna kind of recreate that muscle. Just like that. Y'all see how I just took up that little bit of that void. Just like that right there. We're gonna do it to both sides. You can go ahead and build this, when you put your ears together to begin with. I don't like to, because all deer have got different size ear butts and different amounts of ear skin. This place right here is where I can take up some slack if I need to. All right, that looks nice. So now what I'm gonna do, I'll go ahead and finish up this stitch, get it done. We'll take all that glue and we're gonna push it on into that. All right, I've got that seam stitched up now. So let's get this skin about where I want it. It's gonna be real close right there. While I was stitching this up, I did take a blob of glue and put here under this ear butt and here under this ear butt with a paintbrush to make sure that I get all this glued up. Like I said before, you want to make sure that you're gluing as you go, because it's easy to cover all this stuff up putting the deer together this way, and you get to where you can't get 2 places to put glue there if you don't do it as you're going. All right, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna take this glue, you'll see it, see that hair moving? It's all that glue spreading out around those burrs on the back of those ears. I'm gonna press that clay down just a little bit, kind of flatten it out. Not completely flat, we're just gonna soften it up just a little bit so it's not just a big sharp ridge there. You do that, make sure you work all the air out of your eye sockets, or around the eyes anyway. See where it made that nice edge for that hair to sit on right there? There you go. You can see real good there where it made that brow ridge. Just kind of sets it off, makes it look really good. Okie dokie. Finally, time for the mouth. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim the skin around the mouth. I like to save all of this extra skin until last, because while you're doing all the work that we've just done, this tends to get dry. And by leaving the extra skin on here, the edges get dry and you can cut them off, and then you're left with really soft tucking skin for the lips. This is also something that you could do, a totally different order. If you wanted to go ahead and do the mouth after you did the eyes, you just want to make sure that all your epoxy work is done before the epoxy kicks. You want to make sure all that stuff's in the right place. On these eyes, they're already starting to harden. So, it won't be a few more minutes, they're going to be set. I mean, the downside is you have to be able to get everything just the way you want it kind of quick, but the upside is your eyes look like they do when you sculpt them. You don't have to worry about them drawing up and doing all kind of crazy stuff. Okay, now that I've got that trim, fold this back, we'll get some glue in here. Before I put glue on this nose pad, I'm going to add just a little bit of clay. Show y'all what I'm going to do here. It's over here where y'all can see what's going on. I'll take just a little bit of clay. This is not going to take much. And what this will do is make that nose look a little bit more supple. It's also going to let us put a little bit of definition in it where that center line comes together right there. Also, every one of those little hairs on your nose pad where they are attached to the deer's nose, it's going to have a slight indent. And in this clay, you can put that in there and show that little bit of definition. But there again, don't use very much clay. I'm going to take very, very, very little. I'm going to put just a little bit on this bottom jaw too. Just to give that a little bit of structure there. Just like that look. All right, now, go ahead and give us some glue on here. All right. I have never found an advantage to doing the top or the bottom first. Main thing is just want to make sure that you start at the very edge of that skin, make sure it's pressed all the way up in there, and make sure that it's nice and flat and doesn't have a fold in it when you tuck it. Pay special. Did you hear that? Pay special attention to making sure that everything is centered. Your hair here, make sure that's centered. Make sure that that line right there in the center of that nose is in the middle of that nose pad, is in the middle of that jaw. Make sure all that lines up. You'll see the occasional mount that is not lined up like that. And you can take a mount that is a very good looking mount and have some skin that's offline right there. And it just sort of throws everything off. So make sure you got that right. All right. What I like to do, you can see how tight this is right here. And I'm using a really thin tucking tool. But even with that Dremel, if you do it right, you're not going to have a real big lip slot. Once I get that in there, I use my little carburetor screwdriver. I like this because it's steel. It doesn't bend. But I've taken the end of it and filed down the end where it's not sharp. And I use it to grab the skin. And really put some pressure behind it. I don't have to worry about bending it, breaking it like you would a stainless steel modeling tool. Okay. Now then, we'll make sure everything's lined up. Well, we've got this upside down. I'm going to go ahead and put just a few pins in it. I like to put one there. Put one there. And I'll put one right there. That will keep all that from drooping as that glue's trying to set. There we go. Now we're flipping back over and see if we can line all this up. Okay, so this nose, you can see it's right now, it's just kind of bulbous, just kind of poking out. Take us a modeling tool here. And we're going to take that clay and gently work this nose pad and work that clay into that shape. And what you want to try to do as you're doing this is you want to make sure that you're spreading this nose pad out some. What that's going to do is it's going to make those nodules separate. And you're going to be able to get the lines in between each nodule so that when you go to paint this, your paint goes in between each one of those and creates that separation. It's going to give you a whole lot more detail when you do your finish work. Make sure you keep that nose pad centered. Make sure it's even on both sides. And once we get everything where we want it here, tuck those nostrils. By the time you get that nose pad put where you want it, the nostrils have almost tucked themselves. just a matter of just kind of laying everything flat in there, and then we'll stuff that with plastic once we get all this taken care of. But you want that nose pad, it's just a little high right there. You want it almost curling over into the nostrils right there. Just like that. Also, make sure that your nose pad is high enough up on the nose of the deer, up on the snout. If you put that down too far, you just have a little flat nose on the front of there, and that's just not right. Here we are. Now, right here in the front, the underside of this, we're going to move this up just a little bit on both sides. Kind of shake that clay under there. Just going to show that bottom lip just a little bit. Make sure that center line is lined up. See, I just pulled that over a little bit to get that back in the center. Make sure that that's right in line where you want it. I like to pull this up a little bit here and lay this modeling tool in here and push in on that clay where it holds that shape right there. Now when that dries, it's going to give you that little bit of extra dimension. Get off my dude. Also, I like to do it just slightly at the top. Not much. Just enough to give it just a little bit of dimension up here. About like that. Get this back stapled up. We're getting close to a deer head. All right, so on the back of this deer, I'll do it just like we would any other deer. I'm just gluing him up, and we're gonna staple the back. Make sure you don't get your glue too off thick down here on the brisket area, because this is where a lot of your water and glue is gonna drain as the deer is drying. Don't want that to be too thick up in there. As you're doing this, something else to pay attention to. See how crooked that hairline is going up that brisket. You want to make sure that where this muscle comes down, you want that to be centered. You want this to follow that brisket. And right here, that hairline will run right down the side of that, or front edge of that shoulder, right where that color transition is. Follow that shoulder. That right there. This brisket has been split, probably where he was gutted. So I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna pin this. You can stitch it if you want to. These hairs right here are long enough, you'd never notice if it was stitched. but it's just as easy and works just as well. Actually, it's easier and works just as well, in my opinion, just to pin this. I do recommend using Pro 1 hide paste. That's what I like to use. It's very sticky. It does a very good job of grabbing the cape. Once it starts to kick, anywhere that you've pinned, it's going to stick it to it. You ain't got to worry about it. It ain't going nowhere. That's really all you need, just a few pins just to keep that in place. And I also like to put a few pins along the bottom of this neck muscle right here. That's one of those places that likes to try to drum as it's drying because of all that water coming down here. So go ahead and put a few pins there, and I'll put one right here in front of this shoulder muscle to hold that skin up right there as it's drying. Right there. Now on the back side of this, here's what I'm going to do. Got all this laid about as flat as I can get it. I'm going to start stapling on the edge here. Sure, try to keep all that as flat as you can. Where this deer's got so much hair, not easy to do. I'm going to take my scalpel, pull this skin over, and right along that shoulder, make a cut, just like that. I'll cut a little wedge out of that. And we'll be able to fold that around like this. It's going to meet up with that other side. And of course, I have staples. There we go. Now then, let's try this again. Do the same thing over here. All right. Now I'm going to use my scalpel. I'll trim the skin right up against the staples. You can use scissors to do this. I find it's a little bit easier to use the scalpel and then go back and trim the hair with scissors. Get you a little bit cleaner look. That right there. Look how thick that hair is. It's gonna hold the deer off the wall. All right, now then. Well, you've got him up here on the side. You want to make sure, see how these hairs are going different directions? Make sure that you've got all this going the right way before you staple. Everything looks like it's laying pretty good in here, so ain't got nothing to worry about. You know, the good thing about all of this is there are channels all over the internet showing you how to mount a deer. And I would highly suggest going and looking at all of them. Watch as much as you possibly can. This is how I like to do mine. It's how I have adapted the way I do my work over the years. But it's not going to be the same for everybody. There's going to be different things that you're good at. There's going to be different things that you like doing more than others, different ways that you like everything to look differently than what I like. So make sure to watch as much as you can, learn as much as you can, and you'll be surprised at just how much you'll figure out how to do stuff your own way and make it as easy as you can on yourself. For your skill set and for your opinion on what you think a deer should look like. See, even with this real long hair, the scalpel just kind of follows that staple line as you pull on the skin. Makes it a little bit easier to get through all that hair. There's hair everywhere. Like a shedding dog. Then I'll take my scissors, kind of fluff this out a little bit. Take my scissors and just cut that edge. Like that. Not that you're going to see it from the back, but very little extra work to give it a little bit cleaner look. There we go. Now, one more thing I want to show y'all before we step back and take a look at what we've created here. On this nose, you can see where each of these nose hairs are. You can put a dent where each one of those things connect. Make a dent in that nose pad in that clay where that hair would be attached. When that dries, you're going to be amazed at the difference that makes in just that little bit of noticeable detail. You'll be able to build up those nodules in between each one of those hairs, and each one will be sunk in slightly. It just makes it look so good. All right, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. All right. Now, let's see what we made. There we are. Y'all see them good? That is a good looking mount. And y'all, there again, this is just one way to mount a deer head. This is not the right way. This is just my way. So if y'all have got any kind of opinions on what you think you might want to try, well, search the internet. There's all kind of videos, all kind of ways to do this. Matter of fact, all three of my videos of how to mount a deer head are completely different. And I would highly suggest going back and watching the other two, if you have not seen them yet, just to get an idea as to where I started, where I went to, and where I have ended up so far. And it'll help you understand why I do things the way that I do them now. And also, it will show you a way that you can do it differently if you want to do it the other ways that I used to do it. I'm going to put the links of the other two videos down in the description below. So y'all be sure to check that out if you do need to go and back and look at those other videos. If you hadn't seen them, like I said, I highly suggest you watch them because it's 3 completely different methods of how to do this. Also, in the description, I'm going to have my Amazon store, eBay store, all of my links. If you want to buy a hat, I've got some Cedar Ridge Chronicles hats. Whatever y'all want, I've got all kind of links down there in the description. So y'all check all that stuff out. And if you need any kind of supplies and stuff in my Amazon store, most of what I use, if it's for sale on Amazon, I've probably got a link on there for it. And it can save you a ton of time looking for it. It's not going to cost you any more to use my link. It just sends you straight to that product so that you don't have to go on Amazon and search. And it's pretty much exactly everything that I use in here. If they sell it, I've got a link for it on there. If you don't see it, then holler at me and I'll see if I can either find a link or I'll try to get you recommended somewhere to a store to where you can buy what it is that I like to use. Really appreciate the support. I'm at, I guess, 25,000, 24,000 subscribers now on YouTube, and it is absolutely amazing. Cannot believe that I've been able to do this with all of y'all's help. It's just been crazy. But thanks so much for the support. If y'all have not already subscribed, please go hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you nothing. It's absolutely free. All you're doing is supporting me, helping out the channel. Be sure to give the video a like. That's also going to boost the video. And guys, thanks for watching. We'll see y'all on the next one.